Before time, before stars, before even the idea of light, there was only endless darkness. A silence so deep that nothing moved, nothing spoke, nothing existed. No sky, no ground, no direction. Only an ocean of nothingness stretching forever. It was a place without memory and without future. A place where even waiting had no meaning, because time itself was asleep. If someone could stand in that void, they would not see, they would not hear, they would not even know themselves. Yet, something was hiding inside that darkness. Something small, silent, and patient. And then it began. At first, it was the faintest flicker. A pulse, weaker than a breath, born out of nowhere. The darkness shivered, disturbed for the first time. That tiny pulse of energy fought to exist. It was fragile, as if the endless void could swallow it at any second. But the pulse grew. One became two. Two became many. They gathered together, trembling with force. Then, in a moment that changed everything, the pulse erupted. Light burst into existence. Not a soft glow, but a violent storm. Blinding waves of fire spread in all directions, tearing through the silence. The void that once ruled without rival was broken apart. The first darkness had been wounded, but the victory was not certain. The newborn light did not flow calmly. Twisted, boiled, and exploded. Rivers of heat stretched endlessly, colliding with each other in chaos. The young universe screamed with storms of energy. Darkness had been pushed back, but it still lingered, circling, waiting to swallow the fragile sparks again. Would the new creation survive, or would it vanish back into nothing? The battle had begun. Invisible winds rushed across the newborn space. Firestorms spun like whirlpools. Energy waves clashed like thunder without sound. Every spark seemed to fight for its own survival. Some sparks died quickly, swallowed by emptiness. Others burned stronger, as if determined to stay alive. It was in this violent sea that something mysterious appeared: gravity. Gravity was silent, unseen, but powerful. Where chaos wanted to scatter, gravity wanted to gather. It reached out like invisible hands, pulling the wild energy into shapes. It whispered to the storm, "Do not fall apart. Come together." And slowly the chaos listened. Tiny fragments of matter began to cling together. Small clusters formed, held tightly by gravity's grip. But the struggle was far from over. The energy was still wild, and darkness was still near. The void wanted everything to return to silence. Pushed against the sparks, tried to tear them apart. But gravity resisted. Again and again it pulled the pieces back. The sparks began to move in patterns, not just accidents. The universe, for the very first time, was learning order. Imagine an ocean made not of water, but of pure fire. Imagine storms larger than 1,000 worlds, colliding, breaking, and then being pulled back into new forms. That was the universe's first heartbeat. A heartbeat that was fragile, but unstoppable. The suspense was heavy. The question was alive. Would this fragile heartbeat continue, or would it fade away forever? The darkness answered with silence, but the sparks answered with light. They pushed forward, spreading faster, reaching further. The void was no longer endless. It now had edges where light had claimed its space. The young universe was growing, expanding, breathing, but still danger remained. The chaos of energy could collapse at any time. If the fragile balance broke, everything could fall back into the first darkness. The universe itself seemed unsure of its future. And yet, something hidden guided it. Something no one could see, but everything could feel. It was as if an invisible architect was laying the foundation for everything to come. The first darkness was not gone. It lingered at the edges, watching, patient as always. But it had been challenged, and that challenge would change eternity. The sparks of light, young and defiant, did not understand their enemy. They only knew one thing: they must keep burning. They must keep spreading. This was not just an explosion. This was the birth of a story, written not with ink, but with fire and silence. The first chapter of creation, a tale where light and dark struggled for power, where chaos and order danced at the edge of survival. And as the universe trembled with its first breath, one question rose louder than all others. Was this the beginning of everything, or only the first step toward something even greater? The newborn universe was not calm. It was wild, violent, and unstable. Rivers of fire stretched across endless space. Explosions rumbled like silent thunder. Storms of heat and light clashed, each one trying to dominate. It was not a place of peace. It was a battlefield. In this battlefield, new players entered, the first forces. They were unseen, yet stronger than fire. They were quiet, yet louder than the roar of chaos. They were the laws that would decide the universe's future. The first was gravity. Gravity had already touched the storm in Part 1, but now it rose with full strength. It reached out like invisible chains, pulling scattered energy closer. Where fire wanted to run wild, gravity whispered, "Stay, come together, do not scatter." Tiny fragments of matter began to cling. Small clusters formed, then larger ones. Gravity became the silent architect, holding chaos in place. But gravity was not alone. From the heart of the fire came another force, electromagnetism. Unlike gravity, it worked on smaller scales, binding particles tightly together. Where gravity pulled everything large, electromagnetism shaped the small. Sparks of charged particles danced, joined, and resisted. They built bonds stronger than firestorms. Two allies had arrived, gravity and electromagnetism. Together they began to tame the chaos. But not all forces were gentle. Deep inside the burning sea, another power stirred, the strong force. It was fierce, almost ruthless. It reached into the tiniest pieces of matter, locking them together so tightly they could not escape. It was the guardian of the smallest building blocks. Without the strong force, particles would fall apart like dust. With it, they became seeds of atoms. The battle grew fiercer. Heat roared, darkness lingered, but the forces stood their ground. Then came the weakest of them, the weak force. Small, subtle, but mysterious. Where others built, the weak force changed. It transformed particles from one type to another, creating variety inside the storm. Without it, the universe would be plain and lifeless. With it, the story gained new twists. Now 4 forces walked across the battlefield. Gravity pulled the large. Electromagnetism danced with the charged. The strong force locked matter together. The weak force reshaped it. For the first time, there was balance. But balance did not mean peace. The universe was still young and violent. Explosions ripped through space. Fire clouds expanded and cooled. Energy waves clashed endlessly. Yet within the storm, patterns began to form. Gravity bent the glowing gas into swirls. Electromagnetism sparked inside them, making particles crash and bond. The strong force tied those bonds into unbreakable knots. The weak force kept everything changing, preventing stillness. It was like an orchestra of invisible musicians, each playing a different tune. First, it sounded like noise. Slowly, it began to sound like music. The universe was learning its first rules. And yet, suspense remained. Would these forces work together long enough to build something lasting? Or would they tear the young universe apart with their struggle? The darkness was still watching. It had lost the first battle, but not the war. Around the edges of creation, it waited. If the forces failed, if the light collapsed, the void would return, stronger than ever. But the forces did not break. Instead, they held the firestorm in their grip. Slowly, the violent sea cooled. Where once there was only raw energy, now there were particles. Where once there was only collision, now there was structure. The first atoms whispered into existence. Simple, fragile, yet unshakable. Hydrogen, the simplest of all, was born in the heart of the chaos. Helium followed, small but stronger. These atoms became the first bricks of creation. Without them, no stars, no galaxies, no life could ever rise. Gravity gathered these atoms into clouds, swirling endlessly. Electromagnetism danced within those clouds, heating and charging them. The strong and weak forces worked inside the atoms, holding them firm and changing them when needed. The universe, once only a spark, now had builders. Still, it was dangerous. The heat was deadly. The storms could crush anything fragile. The darkness could still return. But the forces were determined. They did not rest. They pulled, they tied, they reshaped. Imagine a sculptor carving from fire instead of stone, shaping not statues but worlds. That was what the forces were doing, sculpting the chaos into order. Billions of years later, humans would give these forces names, study them, and use them. But in this moment, they were nameless giants, the hidden hands of creation. The suspense was not over. The question remained. Would these forces be enough to build stars and galaxies? Or would the chaos grow too strong and destroy everything? The young universe trembled with uncertainty. The first darkness still whispered, "You cannot last. You will fall." But the forces answered with action. They held firm, shaping, guiding, building. The story was far from finished. The battle of the early universe was only the beginning. The young universe was restless. It had forces now, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and the weak, but it was still not calm. Instead of peace, the newborn cosmos was full of fire. Explosions raged in every direction. Storms of energy clashed like titans in the void. Space itself seemed alive, breathing in chaos. Great clouds of gas stretched endlessly, glowing with fierce light. They twisted and spun, pulled by gravity's invisible hands. Waves of heat rushed through them, making them burn brighter. It was a storm without sky, a fire without end. This was the age of creation through fire. Each explosion was both destruction and birth. When clouds of gas collided, they tore apart into fragments. But in the same moment, gravity began to pull the fragments back together. It was a strange dance. Chaos breaking things apart, gravity building them again. The universe was sculpting itself through violence. Inside the giant clouds, something new was happening. Pressure began to rise. Gravity squeezed the gas tighter and tighter, forcing particles closer than ever before. The temperature climbed to unimaginable levels. And then boom, the first stars were born. They lit up the void like cosmic torches. Huge balls of fire blazed with furious heat, shining brighter than anything before them. The darkness that had ruled for so long was pushed back even further. The void was no longer a kingdom of silence. It had become a sky filled with burning suns. But these first stars were not calm guardians. They were monsters. They were huge, many times larger than the stars humans see today. Their lifetimes were short, but their power was terrifying. They burned their fuel with hunger, raging hotter than anything imagined. Around them, space itself shook with storms of radiation. The storms did not end there. Some of these massive stars lived only a few million years before collapsing under their own weight. When they died, they exploded with a violence greater than anything before. Supernova. The word did not yet exist, but the event shook the cosmos. A star's death ripped open the skies, blasting fire and elements across the universe. These explosions seeded the empty space with heavier atoms, carbon, oxygen, iron. Without them, future worlds would never exist. Creation demanded destruction. Life could only rise through death. The universe was both cruel and generous at once. More stars were born, and more storms followed. Nebulae, giant glowing clouds of gas, became nurseries for these stars. Gravity pulled gas together, pressure rose, fire ignited, and new suns lit the sky. The cycle repeated endlessly. Birth, life, death, and then rebirth. Imagine the sky filled not with one sun, but with thousands, millions, each one exploding into life and then into death. That was the early universe, a storm of fire spreading across infinite darkness. And still, suspense remained. Would the universe find stability in this storm, or would it burn itself apart? The first darkness had not vanished. It lingered in the empty spaces, silent and patient. Every explosion, every flame was a risk. If the balance broke, all could collapse again. Yet the forces held steady. Gravity kept gathering, electromagnetism kept sparking. The strong and weak forces kept shaping. Together they built order from the firestorms. The first galaxies began to whisper into existence. Not yet fully formed, but hinted at. Clouds of stars gathered into swirls. Filaments of light stretched across vast distances. The storms of creation were not just chaos. They were laying the groundwork for something greater. But the price of creation was high. The giant first-generation stars burned out quickly, leaving behind black holes and neutron stars. These strange objects bent space itself, pulling everything toward them. Around them, storms grew wilder, as matter fell into their grasp. It was a universe of extremes. Burning stars, violent explosions, crushing black holes, endless clouds of gas. Beauty and terror lived side by side. And yet, something remarkable was happening. Every storm, every fire, every explosion was adding pieces to the puzzle. The early universe was building the ingredients for planets, for galaxies, for future life. Without the storms of destruction, there could never be creation. The suspense was alive. Could this fragile process continue long enough for something stable to appear? Or would chaos win again? The storms roared their answer, not in words but in fire. They burned brighter, spread wider, and filled the void with light. The young universe had chosen its path. It would not return to silence. It would fight, through fire and storms, toward a future no one yet could imagine. And as the stars blazed and exploded, as galaxies began to form their first shapes, one truth echoed across creation. From chaos comes order. From fire comes life. But deep at the edges, the first darkness still whispered, "This is only the beginning." The universe was no longer empty. It was alive with fire. Stars blazed like burning giants. Explosions of supernova filled space with storms of light and new elements. But behind all this chaos, there was one quiet master at work: gravity. Gravity had been there since the first spark. Silent, invisible, patient. While storms raged and stars exploded, gravity never stopped pulling. It was the unseen hand, the secret choreographer of a great cosmic dance. Every star, every cloud of gas, every fragment of matter, gravity reached out and held them, pulled them closer, then spun them into patterns. At first, these patterns were wild, like children learning to dance in chaos. But slowly they became graceful. Clouds of stars gathered into clusters. Clusters stretched into long strands. The strands wove together, like threads in a giant web. The web grew larger and larger, shaping the first outlines of galaxies. It was as if the universe itself was learning how to draw. The dance was not peaceful. Gravity was strong, but so was chaos. Stars fought against being pulled. Explosions tore through clusters. Darkness tried to scatter everything back into silence. Still, gravity pulled again, patient and stubborn. It never gave up. The stars obeyed. Some formed into great spirals, arms curling outward like whirlpools of fire. Others gathered into glowing balls, smooth and bright. Some stretched into strange, uneven shapes, twisted by battles with nearby clusters. Each galaxy became a unique dancer, moving to gravity's rhythm. The dance was endless. Stars moved around the centers of their galaxies, not in straight lines but in graceful orbits. They circled again and again, held in place by gravity's invisible grip. If gravity let go, they would fly off into the dark. But gravity never let go. Still, there was mystery. The galaxies moved in ways that seemed impossible. They spun too fast. The stars at the edges should have flown away, yet they stayed. Something unseen was helping gravity. Something hidden, strong, and silent. Dark matter. No eyes could see it. No light revealed it. Yet its presence was everywhere. Dark matter acted like an invisible stage beneath the dancers, holding them steady. Without it, the galaxies would have torn apart. With it, the dance continued. Was dark matter a friend? Or was it something stranger, something that used gravity for its own design? The universe kept its secret, but the galaxies spun on, glowing islands in a sea of shadow. The dance of gravity was not only about beauty, it was also about danger. Galaxies collided. When two dancers came too close, Gravity pulled them together in violent embrace. Stars were thrown into new paths, gas clouds smashed into storms, and black holes grew hungry at the centers. Yet, out of destruction came new order. Collisions created new galaxies, larger and brighter than before. It was a dance of both creation and destruction. Imagine billions of stars spinning in harmony, each one bound to the others by an invisible thread. Imagine two entire galaxies rushing toward each other, colliding, merging, and becoming something new. That was the stage gravity had built. The suspense remained. Would gravity always guide the dance? Or could the first darkness return to break the rhythm? If the invisible threads snapped, if the hidden stage of dark matter vanished, all the galaxies would scatter into emptiness. But gravity held firm. The universe grew more structured. Great filaments of galaxies stretched like bridges across space. Vast voids of darkness lay between them, silent and empty. From far away, the universe looked like a giant web of light, glowing in the endless night. This was not random. This was design. This was the dance of gravity made visible. And still, the story was not finished. Inside the galaxies, new battles were rising. Stars lived and died in their orbits. Black holes pulled at their neighbors. Gas clouds swirled into storms, ready to form new generations of stars. Gravity guided every step, never resting, never letting go. The dance would continue for billions of years. But in this early age, the universe stood at the edge of something new. Galaxies had formed. Stars burned. Elements had been scattered. The foundation was ready. The next steps would lead to even greater wonders. Yet, in the quiet spaces between galaxies, the first darkness lingered. It had been pushed aside but not destroyed. Watching, waiting. For now, gravity was the master. The universe moved to its rhythm, spinning, colliding, creating. The cosmic dance had begun, and it was more beautiful and more dangerous than anything imagined. The question whispered across the galaxies. Was this dance only the beginning of harmony, or the start of another storm? The galaxies spun, bright and beautiful, each one a city of stars glowing in the deep night. Spirals stretched their arms, glowing like cosmic whirlpools. Spheres of light burned with quiet strength. The dance of gravity had shaped order from chaos. But something was strange. The galaxies moved too fast. The stars at the edges circled with a speed that made no sense. If only visible matter held them, the stars should have flown away, lost in the emptiness. Yet they stayed, bound as if by invisible chains. Something unseen was at work. It had no light, no glow, no fire, no reflection. It could not be touched, it could not be seen, yet its presence was stronger than all the stars combined. It was everywhere, and it was silent. This was the hidden architect, dark matter. Dark matter did not shine, but it carried weight. It shaped galaxies without showing itself. Like a skeleton inside a body, it gave structure to the universe. Without it, stars would scatter like dust in the wind. With it, galaxies stood firm, spinning gracefully. But what was it? No star revealed its answer. No explosion whispered its secret. Dark matter moved in silence, unseen but powerful. Even the newborn universe did not seem to fully understand it. It was a builder but also a mystery. Gravity was its ally. Together, they wove invisible threads across the cosmos. Dark matter became the stage on which galaxies danced. It filled halos around them, holding them steady like invisible cages. The galaxies floated inside these cages, never breaking free. The suspense deepened. Was dark matter a friend, quietly guiding creation? Or was it something stranger? An ancient shadow with its own hidden plan? The universe gave no answer. Instead, it showed its work. Great filaments of dark matter stretched across space, invisible bridges connecting galaxies into vast webs. Where the filaments were thick, galaxies gathered in clusters, like pearls strung along a necklace. Where the filaments were thin, empty voids spread wide, dark and silent. The cosmic web was born. From far away, the universe now looked like a giant living map. Bright galaxies lined the hidden skeleton of dark matter, glowing at the points where the web was strongest. The unseen architect had drawn the design, and the stars had followed it. But even as the web grew, the question remained, what is dark matter? It was not fire like the stars. It was not gas like the nebulae. It was not dust, not planets, not anything known. It was something else, something beyond sight. A force that built but never revealed its face. And still, it was not alone. Alongside dark matter moved another mystery, dark energy. While dark matter pulled things together, dark energy pushed them apart. Together, they shaped the universe like opposing artists. One built the frame, the other stretched the canvas. The galaxies were trapped between them, moving to a rhythm no one could fully hear. The suspense grew sharper. If dark matter held galaxies in place, and dark energy drove them apart, then who truly ruled the universe? Was gravity still the master? Or were these two hidden powers the real architects, writing a story no star could resist? The stars continued their blazing lives, unaware of the mysteries that bound them. Supernovae exploded, black holes swallowed, planets began to whisper into existence. But all of it was guided by a stage unseen. Dark matter watched silently, never revealing itself. Imagine a vast theater. The actors, the stars, planets, galaxies, shine brightly under the lights. The audience sees only their performance. But behind the curtain, hidden stagehands move the scenery, guide the action, and decide what the audience will see next. That was dark matter, the hidden stagehand of the universe. Without it, the play would collapse. And so the universe expanded, galaxies spun, and the cosmic web stretched further. Dark matter was everywhere, yet nowhere. The first darkness lingered at the edges, but now it had competition. Once it was the ruler of silence. Now a new shadow, darker but creative, had claimed the role of architect. Still, the story was not finished. The galaxies were young. Stars burned in their billions. Black holes grew in their centers. Planets, small and fragile, were beginning to appear around newborn suns. The dance continued on a stage that no one could see, shaped by a force that no one could touch. The hidden architect remained silent, guiding without voice, building without form. The question echoed louder than ever. What is dark matter? A protector of creation? Or a secret master writing its own design? The universe had grown larger. Stars had been born in storms of fire, and many had already died in explosions brighter than a billion suns. Dark matter had spread its invisible web, giving structure to everything. Gravity had guided the dance, holding stars together. Now, something even greater was about to appear. The first galaxies. At first, they were only gatherings of stars, small clusters glowing faintly in the night. Gravity pulled them closer, weaving them into shapes. The clusters grew, linking arms like dancers in a vast hall. More stars joined, more clouds of gas were pulled in, until the clusters became giants. And so, the first galaxies were born. They were not small creations. They were sprawling cities of light, stretching across thousands of light years. Billions of stars burned together, locked into harmony by gravity and dark matter. Each galaxy became a world of its own, a kingdom of suns glowing in the darkness. Some galaxies formed into spirals. Their arms curled gracefully, glowing like whirlpools of fire. Others became smooth, round spheres, bright and dense. Some twisted into irregular shapes, bent by collisions and battles with their neighbors. No two galaxies were the same. Each had its own personality, its own story, but they all shared one truth. They were the first great structures of the universe. The galaxies moved through space like floating islands in an endless sea. Between them stretched great voids, dark and empty, where no star dared to shine. Yet along the filaments of dark matter, the galaxies gathered in clusters, shining like pearls on an invisible string. Still, the universe was young, and these galaxies were unstable. Their stars burned with fury. Their gas clouds clashed in storms. Black holes grew in their centers, swallowing matter and bending space around them. Collisions between galaxies were common, each one reshaping the dancers into new forms. Imagine two galaxies rushing toward each other, each with billions of stars. As they collided, stars were thrown into new orbits, gas clouds smashed into violent bursts, and black holes consumed everything they could reach. But from this destruction came new beauty. Galaxies merged into larger, brighter structures. Creation and destruction walked side by side. The first galaxies lit up the universe. For the first time, the darkness of space had true rivals. The glowing arms of spirals stretched for millions of light years. Their light crossed the vast emptiness, announcing their presence to the silent void. But even as galaxies blazed, suspense remained. Would they survive the storms inside them? Would gravity and dark matter hold them together? Or would they fall apart into fragments? The first darkness still lingered at the edges, patient and watchful. It had lost battles before, but it never surrendered. If the galaxies weakened, the void was ready to claim them again. Yet the galaxies did not fall. Instead, they multiplied. From one came many. From many came countless more. The universe became a tapestry of light, stitched across the hidden skeleton of dark matter. Wherever the web was strong, galaxies gathered in clusters. Wherever the web was weak, silence stretched across endless voids. Inside these galaxies, something new began. Stars aged and died, scattering heavier elements into space. Carbon, oxygen, iron, materials that would one day form planets and life, were born in the hearts of dying stars. Galaxies became factories of creation, each one building the ingredients of the future. And at their centers, massive black holes grew. These were not ordinary black holes, but giants millions, even billions of times heavier than the sun. They pulled stars and gas around them, forming glowing disks of fire. Some shot out jets of energy across light years, beams brighter than entire galaxies. The galaxies were alive, but they were also dangerous. Still, their beauty was undeniable. From far away, the spirals looked like cosmic flowers blooming in the night. The spheres shone like lanterns hung in the darkness. The irregular galaxies twisted like wild flames, unpredictable and strange. Each one was a masterpiece, painted by forces unseen. The suspense was not over. The galaxies were young, and the universe had only just begun its journey. Would these galaxies remain forever? Or would time and darkness tear them apart? For now they burned. The first galaxies stood as proof that chaos could become order, that fire could become structure, that darkness could be challenged by light. They were the universe's greatest triumph so far, and yet also its greatest gamble. And as the galaxies spun, glowing islands in an endless sea, one question echoed louder than all others. Were these shining giants permanent, or only temporary lights in a universe still ruled by shadows?